Welcome to the Strategy Skills Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Safarova, and our podcast sponsor today is strategytraining.com. If you want to strengthen your strategy skills, you can get the overall approach used in well-managed strategy studies. It's a free download we prepared for you, and you can get it at firmsconsulting.com/overall approach. And you can also get another download we prepared for you. It is McKinsey and BCG Winning Resume, which is a resume that got offers from both of those firms. And you can get it at firmsconsulting.com/resume PDF. And today we have with us David G. Ewing, the innovative CEO of Motiv. David's Harvard engineering degree taught him to dive deep into technical challenges, and he focused on revolutionizing the realm of customer experience since 1998. And under his leadership, Motiv has earned a spot on the Inc. 5000 list of America's fastest growing companies. And in 2023, the company was also recognized as a great place to work in the US. David, welcome.
Chris, thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure to be here.
A lot of achievements. Congratulations.
Well, I've had a lot of support and I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, so I might as well have the achievements too.
When you first started Motiv, what were the key decisions or actions that set the foundation for the long-term success of the company?
Well, oddly enough, I didn't make the decisions that set the long-term success of the company. So there's mistake number one. I started Motiv out of necessity, and I really didn't have a great plan. So really what happened, the true story is that I was 24 years old. I was living in the Bay Area. I'd been a really good tech consultant, and I just came off a failed startup. And then the dot-com nuclear winter hit in the middle of 2000, and I needed to come up with a game plan for what I needed to do to just keep paying the bills. So the first 2 weeks after I was laid off, I wrote this business plan, and I had this very exciting vision for a software company. I was going to build a middleware product, and I couldn't get any funding. And finally, I went to all the angels that I knew. I couldn't get any funding from them. And then I went to my family, and I couldn't get any funding from them. But ironically, I'm sitting there pitching the last person, my dad, and he's saying, no, no, no. And he says to me, you've been a pretty good consultant. You have a lot of experience there. Why don't you do that until this, recession passes? And I looked at him and was about to say no when the phone rang. And it was an old colleague of mine who needed some consulting. And I just looked back at him and said, sure, I'm available. And so I took the job really because I needed to pay the rent. And I hired my first employee on September 10th, 2001. So then 9/11 hit, and that was the origin. So it was a gritty, difficult start to the business, but it wasn't until 2005 that I really had I had 4 years of kind of hand to mouth, feast and famine type business before I really had a chance to step back and say, okay, what is this really going to be about? And that's when I really started to put the groundwork in place. But it was 4 years of really trial and error. As a young 24-year-old consultant. And so it wasn't until I was 28 that the game plan really started to ferment.
So what were some early moves 4 years into the journey when you've started feeling, okay, things are starting to get momentum here?
I think by then I had come to one essential realization, and it's something that I think is hard to do in your 20s. And that was that no one was going to check my ego. There was nobody around. I was running things. I had some employees. I had a little bit of success. And if you define ego as disassociating from something, disassociating from reality, right, and not paying attention to the signals around you, I had a terrible ego problem. And it started with the belief that I could be successful if I just tried hard enough, and that's not how it really works. You have to really make sure that every one of your opinions about yourself and about the forecasted outcomes you want has to be grounded in some kind of reality. And you have to be honest enough with yourself to see when that's not occurring, and then, look deep in the mirror, because you can say, well, I'm really going to hope that my employees will they'll check my ego. They'll speak up. They're never going to speak up. You hold the power of hiring and firing over them. It's never going to happen. So you have to find that sense of grounding in reality from other places, whether it's self-awareness or a peer group. And I used both. And that was where I started to really start to gain some wisdom and start to realize that this company had to be bigger than just me. It had to be more than what I could just do on my own. And as a result, that was when things really started to gel. I started to listen to other people. I started to listen to my customers, and lo and behold, what they told me what they needed. And then I was, I think, fortunate enough to partner with Oracle, and, really working with that big company as a very small entity at that point really helped me see kind of the other end of the spectrum. And that enabled me to start putting in the disciplined business processes and to have the real open mindset to have the ability to just comport myself. And, and the ego began to shrink quite a bit as I realized what a small fish I was. And that ironically allowed me to grow.
Would you say that partnering with Oracle was the defining moment for the company?
Yes, without question. And it was funny how it occurred, because even that was not something that I can take a lot of, credit for. What happened instead was I wanted to partner with Salesforce.com. And I just thought it would be a good partnership for where we were. We could do some interesting things. I called them. They were so unimpressed with me that they said, they were real rude to be. They have an ego problem too, I will say. And they said, we need you like we need a hole in the head. Goodbye. And they hung up the phone. And I was so angry that I just started looking around for who possibly could help me compete against them, because I just wanted revenge. I admit I was a little off my rocker back then. And I found Siebel Systems, who was, kind of trying to play catch up on the world of cloud computing back in 2005. And I started to go through the process of becoming one of their partners. And, they were hungrier at the time because they were playing catch up. And I remember it was a Friday in 2005. I got a phone call from the partner manager, and we'd been negotiating back and forth. And he said, I can't tell you why, but all I can tell you is that if you don't sign that agreement today, you're never going to be able to sign it. And I knew what that meant. I knew, it's an acquisition. I didn't know by who. So I signed my partnership, and I became the last Siebel partner ever. And therefore, on Monday, I woke up and I was an Oracle partner. But that became the defining moment, because Oracle's approach to how they do things is very disciplined. It's very rigorous. They have a top-down strategy that's driven by Larry Ellison, for better or for worse. But you line up with that, and you start to figure out how you fit in and how you can make your own unique contribution. And when we built our business around services with Oracle, quite literally, it saved us in 2008 when the financial recession hit, and all my other lines of business in 1 week in 2008, and about November, about this time, what was that? Gosh, 16 years ago, they just dried up in 1 week, and we went from really fast growth to zero in every line of business. And I called my Oracle colleagues and explained like, hey, if you guys can't help me, I'm done. I don't have a game plan here. And they, I think that they made about 10 phone calls, and I had 5 new clients, and we were back on track. And I realized that's the power of having a great partner, of having a great alliance, and the humility to just be transparent about how vulnerable we were as a company. And they saved me. And that was amazing. And so we really drafted and got serious behind Oracle. That was our 3rd year of the partnership. And that's what really allowed Motiv to flourish. And so, 16 years later, it's still one of the strongest lines that we have.
And I can see why they saw you as a good partner, because you're very honest, and that is not something that is common. So that's very refreshing. Thank you for doing this.
Am I being too honest, Chris?
No, not too honest. I love it. Bring it as much as you want.
Okay.
So when you were pitching yourself as a partner, before you landed that great partnership, what you were offering that they didn't have?
The thing is that what made us so weird for Oracle was that they were used to dealing with people who came at their solutions from a very technical, very IT mindset. And, my background had been in strategy and marketing. And I have an engineering degree and I love engineering, but I've always loved solving or identifying the problem more than solving it. So I went to Harvard Engineering, and I remember we used to have this huge inferiority complex because we thought MIT engineers were just the bomb, right? And they are. They're incredible. And we were talking to our professors about maybe we need more bench time. We need more practical hands-on stuff because it's a lot of theory at Harvard. And I remember Professor Jones stood up and he said, building the box, whatever goes inside that box to fix the problem is very fun. It's very exciting. But so often engineers make the mistake of thinking that the box is everything. And really, it's the problem that the box solves. That's what's so important. And so Harvard Engineering takes a really different approach. The classic line is that MIT engineers are far better engineers than Harvard engineers, but they all work for Harvard engineers. And so it's a different program. So going back to what happened with Oracle, well, there are a lot of people who are super excited about what you can do with Oracle technology. I mean, it's super powerful. It's scalable. It's highly secure. It's fairly affordable. It's actually far cheaper usually than alternatives. And you get so much more. But if you fall in love with the box and you don't spend time looking at what problem are you trying to solve with that box, then you're missing things. And so when we came in, we were so excited about building dashboards and reports for CEOs and really trying to take data from all sorts of disparate parts of the organization and boil it all up and build these like amazing templates so that, my dream was a CEO would be addicted to the things that I built. So they would wake up every day and he or she would log into a system that we built and go to our dashboard and it would be the first thing they would look at. And if that happened, we were doing something right, and I would tell the story to Oracle engineers and all the people there, and they'd say things like, well, yeah, but what do you use to integrate from X to Y? And I was like, I don't know. We'll figure that out when we get there. But, what about this? And so at first there was a huge disconnect because, it was as if they were from Venus and I was from Mars and we were not talking the same language. But where it snapped together for both of us was in about 2010, they called me and said, hey, we're doing this roadshow and we want to go to 7 different cities and we want to have lunch and learns. And we were wondering if you have a customer that you could recommend that you implemented with our technology to talk at one of those events. And I said, well, what are the 7 cities? And they gave me the 7 cities and I looked at our customer list and I came back to them and I made some phone calls and I said, yeah, I've got 7 customers. And they said, what do you mean you have 7 customers? And I said, well, I've got a customer in each city. And they'd agree to speak to us. And they said, David, most of our partners can provide 1, or 0. Like they can't provide 7. You have 7 in all 7 cities? And I said, yeah. And so this roadshow suddenly became the Motiv and Oracle roadshow with all of our customers talking about how great everything was. And that's when we got the exposure to them where they said, wow, you guys, you get the what needs to happen with this stuff, not just what does the stuff do. And that's really when we went to the next level with them. And that was really cool. That was fun.
Definitely. Well, that's very consistent with what you already shared earlier. That's just how you operate, doing a lot and really building good relationships with people. So people are willing to go and speak at an event, which is not something that every person enjoys. Public speaking is well known to be not something that many people like.
It's a muscle like anything else, but if you learn how to do it, I think you're better at it. And then I think like all skills, if you're willing to be coached, you can be that much better. So it's often very difficult. I remember the first time I had a presentation coach and they just tore me apart. And it was difficult. And that was 15 years ago. And I was on a podcast, maybe 3 months ago. And afterwards I asked the host, how'd I do? And he tore me apart. So I still have a lot to learn. But it's fun. It's always fun.
But also there are always going to be people who will find something that you need to improve. It doesn't mean that you actually need to improve it, because those imperfections may be things that actually make you stand out and make you really enjoyable person to listen to.
That's right. Yep.
So could you speak a little more about how the types of services you offer, the work you did for clients changed once you became a partner of Oracle?
Yeah. Well, being a partner with Oracle did fulfill 2 lifelong dreams for me. So 2 quick stories. One story was when I was in college, I pulled an all-nighter in computer science, and I don't remember what the assignment was, but I was 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning. We didn't have Red Bull back then. So I was, totally taking no dose, which is not as much fun as Red Bull. And I was staggering out of the science lab, and my CSTA, came over and she said, "Hey, would you like to meet Larry Ellison?" And I said, "I have no idea who that is. And I'm completely, out of my mind." And she said, "Come on, you can do this." And she dragged me into the science center, and there Larry Ellison was, giving a talk called, "The Network is the Computer." And essentially he was talking about the early days of having disparate, decentralized things, that in the old client server model coming together into kind of a thin terminals and a client. So essentially it was probably the precursor to cloud computing. And I thought he was such a interesting and passionate guy. And what really got my respect was when he went to the Q&A after his diatribe, and he was pretty passionate, some of the graduate students started asking very difficult CS questions about databases and about Oracle databases in particular. And he could absolutely go toe to toe with all of them. And he knew his products inside and out. And I thought, wow, this is a super impressive person. So anyway, so it was a lifelong dream to become an Oracle partner. That was one thing. But customer experience is the area that we really specialize in at Motiv. And the reason we specialize in it is because of another story that happened to me. And that is when I graduated from college, I did what everybody does, right? I bought a Euro pass, and I went to Europe to go on, my backpacking trip. I went by myself. And when I got to the airport in Detroit, which is where I was born and raised, my flight to New Jersey had been canceled due to a mechanical problem, which meant I was missing my flight from New Jersey to Charles de Gaulle. And that was it. It was the year of the World Cup. It was 1998. World Cup was going on in Paris, and there were no more flights. That was it. And so I remember just giving this sob story to the flight agent, at the gate or at the desk. And I was like, this is the biggest trip of my life, and I'm just getting started, and all this, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, she listened, and she said, "You know what? There's no flights for 3 weeks, but I'm going to put you in first class, and I'm going to get you to Charles de Gaulle. You're going to France." And I was so thankful. I was so amazed, and they deserve the recognition. It was Continental Airlines. They're unfortunately not around anymore, but I was like, Continental is the greatest airlines of all time. I love these people. And then I fly to New Jersey, and then I get on the plane to Charles de Gaulle. And I don't know what happened to that woman, but there was another woman who was the flight attendant on that flight. And she came and found me, and she said, "Sir, we're not in the habit of taking, unemployed ex-college students and putting them in first class. I don't know how you got here, but you don't belong here." And then she stormed off in a huff. And I thought, what was that for? Like, did that help Continental? I was about to become a Continental customer for life, forever. And with that unnecessary speech, which didn't change the cost structure for Continental or do anything beneficial for them, she almost wrecked it. And I just realized that's the power of customer experience. Those two things, those are two choices that two people made. One that led to a lifetime customer, and one that absolutely shamed someone and made them feel terrible. And we've all had that experience. We've all done that. And so what I've always wanted to do in customer experience is bring the autonomy and the magic and the systems so that you could create those moments of wonder, so that you could create customers who wanted to stay with your company forever, who would go out of their way to find ways to give you an excuse to do business with them, to do that. Yes, sometimes you can give someone a free ticket to Paris. That always works. But better than that is when you have systems where you can do things that don't cost the company a lot of money, but they bring that wonder and that joy. And if you can do that with discipline and systems and data, which we have so much in abundance now, then that's the magic. And so Oracle customer experience products are scalable and allow you to bring that wonder to not just one person, but to thousands of people all at the same time, if you do it right. And that's really where we come in. And that's what makes it a lot of fun.
What was the most difficult as you were growing the company? The company was doing really well now with all the changes and this new exciting partner.
The most difficult thing that I've ever had to get over Well, there's a story for that too. So, boy, Chris, you're pulling them out of me tonight. I have always had a very negative, very critical voice in the back of my mind, constantly whispering, not whispering literally, Mayor, I'm not crazy, but constantly telling me about all the things that are wrong, right? What's not good enough? What's not smart enough? What's going to go wrong? Constant. And the thing is that it's good to think about and anticipate what negative outcomes so that you can be prepared for them and you can, avoid them from happening or be prepared when they do. But that voice robbed me of my joy. And so, while it's important to strive for, we just talked about that perfection, you can strive for perfection, but you have to find excellence along the way. And that voice was crushing me. So what happened was I was at a talk a couple of years ago with the Entrepreneurs Organization in Miami, Florida, and they had this woman named Molly Bloom on the call. I don't know if you've ever seen Molly's Game. It was this big movie that came out about 5 years ago. It's about how this woman who is an Olympic athlete and she was a skier slipped on this small random twig that had been in there. She came out of her ski, she broke her back, and her Olympic dreams were over. And she tried to make a comeback, but she couldn't quite get there. And then she wound up to go, create this illegal poker game, and it became the world's biggest poker game. So that's what the movie's mostly about. Very, very great movie if you haven't seen Molly's Game. But Molly was there. And so the question I asked her is, I said, Molly, after you slipped in the snow and you broke your back, you tried to make a comeback. How the heck did you get into the skis again? I mean, that's crazy to me, like that you would even have the courage to do that. And she said, it was very difficult. And her dad, who's a psychologist, was her main coach. And she said, when I got back into the skis, I would tell my dad, I've got this voice in my head and it's just telling me I'm going to slip again. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to break my back again. And his response to her is the game changer for me. He said, it's okay if that voice is in your head, but what you have to do is you have to talk back to it. And talking to voices in your head does sound really crazy, but I have found that every night when I go to meditate before I go to bed, that voice is there talking about all the things that didn't go as well as I wanted them to. And I have to talk back to it. And when I do, I can get to some place in the middle where I'm being honest and rational about what's happening in my life, but I'm not letting it ruin and rob me of my joy. And growing this company has been a constant struggle and pushing the envelope and trying to do more and trying to solve the next problem, trying to put the right process in place, trying to find those great people, find that next great customer and over and over again. But I didn't have joy for like 7 years because it was just that I got robbed, and that made me change the game for me. And I'm a much happier person.
This is a very powerful advice, and thank you for sharing it. And many of us have this voice, and often it is things that we were told when we were a child, and it just keeps on repeating and became our voice over time. So I agree, we should talk back to it or ignore it or tell it to stop talking.
Yeah.
So you mentioned meditation. Are you using specific type of meditation? Did you try different things and you found something that works best?
I did. So first off, I did what any consultant would do, and that is I hired a consultant to help me meditate. Got to practice what you preach, And so, I had this wonderful woman come in and just simply teach me how to meditate, which turns out, I was super glad for the consulting advice, but anybody can do this. And so I practice two kinds. The first kind is just pure stillness and just focus on my breath and do that every day. And I try to put it into a habit stack. So usually I work out from about 6 to 7 a.m. And right after that, I stretch. And then right after that, I meditate. And that sets my tone for my day. And I like that. That's just a quick stillness meditation. But, I've tried to do some transcendental meditation, which is really nothing more than just having a nonsensical word that you say until some really bad thought comes into your mind, and then you sort of just have this imagination of it just being in a balloon and floating away. And I've done that too. And transcendental meditation has been really great. I often do that on long airplane flights. So I was on a flight to Serbia 2 weeks ago, and there was a person in the row next to me. I'll never forget this. There was a little old lady sitting in front of him, and she wanted to put her seat back, and he refused. He kept jamming her seat forward, and he and I had words, and we were all upset, and everybody, and it was very awkward. And I'm like, great, we're going to be sitting here for 12 hours, and I just went into a transcendental meditation after we got all that done, and I was able to let go and just not sit there and be fuming mad at him. I don't know. I think he was fuming mad at me, but I thought I was on the right side of that one. Let the little old lady sleep. So anyway, that was pretty handy.
How long do you do meditation for?
I have dreams and goals of doing really long ones, but I've done like a 1 hour meditation like once or twice. Half-hour meditations I can do pretty, like once a week I'll do that. But at the very least, sometimes I like to just do between 5 and 10 minutes. And I feel like that's enough. Most days that's enough to kind of help me clear and stay still,
Thank you for sharing. Meditation is very powerful, and it's surprising how many people do meditation but never talk about it. And so other leaders are not doing it because they don't realize how common it is for people who really keep things together and grounded and feel peaceful and calm and centered and have a good perspective. So I'm glad that you mentioned it.
Thank you.
For leaders who are listening to us now, let's say it's someone who is a partner at a consulting firm or a senior person within a tech company, and they're thinking, you know what, I want to start my own business. That's it. Now I'm listening to this. This is so exciting. David was able to do it. I can do it too. So what do you think it takes to succeed as an entrepreneur?
Oh boy. I would say more than anything, it takes a willingness to fail. That's more than anything else. You're going to pick up the skills that you need. I belong to the Entrepreneurs Organization, and we have one of the core values is be bold. And what does that mean? And to us, the way we define it is the willingness to bet on your own abilities. That's what boldness is. And so boldness is not about ego. Boldness is not about taking crazy chances. In fact, I think the best entrepreneurs take few chances. They don't take big risks. And I think that's the biggest misconception. People think an entrepreneur rolls the dice and is a riverboat gambler, and quite the opposite. So if someone's feeling uncomfortable with risk, I'd say embrace that, because that's great. Figure out, where you have real confidence based on fact, and be bold and bet on your own abilities. You're going to learn the things you need to learn, but that's the thing that you need to get comfortable with. And you have to be willing to fail, because you absolutely will. There's no such thing as an entrepreneur who goes out and was right about the market and was right about the price point and was right about the operations and knew exactly how much money they need. I mean, if that was the case, like, everybody would do this. And that's not the case. So you will make mistakes on all of those things. If you can still have your joy while you do it, you should. And I remember the reason I became an entrepreneur, it actually comes down to one moment in my life. It wasn't because my parents were entrepreneurs, because they were. That never did anything for me. But I was riding to school with a friend's dad. And this friend was, his dad was an engineer for, I think, General Motors back in Detroit. And he asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, I didn't know. And he said, do you get good grades? I said, yes, sir, I do. And he said, you know what? If you get good grades, you should go work for yourself, because you're always better off working for yourself. But it wasn't that advice that he gave me. It was the longing in his voice, like he hadn't done it. And I could feel the regret in this man's demeanor as he was going to work, and he wasn't happy about the job that he did. And I didn't know him particularly well. And I didn't know the friend who gave me a ride that day very well. But I'll never forget that regret. And that was what made me an entrepreneur, because I never wanted to feel like that. And so, I've been there and bounced checks all over town and done all kinds of embarrassing things and failed. But I've not had to have that feeling of longing. And I'm super grateful for that.
And you also noticed it, because many people would not notice, but you noticed.
It was pretty clear. It almost was like tearfully sad and awkward.
For someone who is thinking about starting a business, but they're not sure what to focus on, what problem they should solve, what they should do, what would be your advice?
Well, some businesses can start small. Some can't. But I think no matter what, there's always a way to to try something, even if it's just through test conversations until you get right. And in fact, just yesterday, I heard a talk by Ryan Holiday. And for people who don't know Ryan Holiday, he's a great author. He's really well known. He writes a lot about ancient philosophy and how it applies to modern day life. But at one point, he wasn't known for that. He was known for writing marketing books. And he went to his publicist and said, I have this idea. And the publicist said, you are going to be committing career suicide if you switch and start writing about, Marcus Aurelius and meditations. Like, that's bananas. And what was really interesting, what I learned yesterday was it's not that he just went off on his own and was like, forget you, I'm going to do what I want. Like, he didn't do that. Instead, he took a much more disciplined approach where he constantly talked to the people he knew through his marketing books and tested out concepts until he found the right one. And, he was telling this great story about how he wanted to write a book about ego and how ego can be such a problem and what is ego versus confidence and the difference. And he couldn't come up with the right title. And he said he was talking to an NFL football coach and he was telling him, this is what I want to do. And I don't know exactly how to do it. And he's like, I want to write a book about ego though. And the coach said, oh yeah, ego is the enemy. And he was like, that's it. That's how I write the book. And he realized at that moment, the title of the book is Ego is the Enemy. It's where he got the title. And it made me realize you can always test your concepts low risk and then bring the risk up. And again, going back to what I said earlier, entrepreneurs are about taking risk out of a situation, not just going for it. And so if you're thinking about starting a business, find the way to test the concept virtually or with friends, or, simply call up people who are potential customers or find a way to get in front of them. But doing that kind of primary research will eventually give you the things to do. And then, like I said, some businesses you can start small. Some of them you can't start small, but when even a big one you can test on it. And my sister is a great example of that. My sister runs a company called Literati. It's a really wonderful business, and they send books to kids, and you can pick which books you like and put the rest in the box and ship them back. And she's got better prices than Amazon, and the book curation is awesome. But that was not her original idea. Before she went to venture capital and raised all this money, she had all these other ideas and they all were terrible. But fortunately, she didn't put all the money into them and kept honing and trying and testing different things in small scale, so that by the time she went to venture capital and got the revenue to scale up and do this big thing, she knew exactly what she wanted to do. And I think that was why she was so successful.
What are your thoughts on building a smaller business that you own 100% versus going for something bigger, but then you have investors?
I am a big believer in smaller and 100%. I think that there's a place for investors. I like angel investors a lot. And I like having relationships there. But I will tell you, and it probably is going to ruin me one day when somebody digs out this interview, but I'm going to go on record and to say that I don't think that the bigger investments have the right focus and priorities. So I don't like private equity. That's probably going to kill me one day. But yes, I don't like private equity. And I don't like private equity for all the reasons that they have to do with customer experience. I think that when private equity comes in, they're looking for that 3 to 5 year exit. They're looking to load up your company with debt. They want asymmetrical gains for themselves. They're not your partner. And I think that can really lead to a lot of bad choices. And I think who suffers the most? The entrepreneur suffers a lot, but even worse than the entrepreneur is what happens to the customer. Because, oftentimes the prices go immediately up, or there's massive shrinkflation in the offering where like the best parts of it are scooped out. And it doesn't show right away, but it catches up with them over time. I mean, you can almost always see a company that's been bought by private equity, and you can watch the deterioration of their reviews. You can watch the deterioration of their things long before their revenue falls off. But the nice thing is that if you're an entrepreneur, there's always other side of that coin, which is there's going to be a new market opportunity there, because that which used to be unassailable and amazing and dominant is now vulnerable and soft and upsetting customers. And that's where you can win. And so I like to play the other half of that game where I'm taking business from those guys as opposed to working with them.
That is true. In that situation, you have customers who would gladly pay more to a competitor.
Yeah.
Because they're so upset.
Yeah. Yeah. And that gets back to this idea that, and this is something that I remember when I was 8 years old, my dad took me to go buy a bicycle, and there were 3 bikes on the rack, and one of them was just the best bike in the shop, but I didn't like that bike. And I admit this now, but when I was 8 years old, the bike I wanted was overpriced, and it had this really cool, like tinted clear chain guard. And I don't know why I thought that was the coolest thing. And so I tried all 3 bikes, and my dad was like, "You sure you don't want this other one? It's high performance. It's really great." I'm like, "No, I want this one." And what I realized later on when someone explained it to me is we are emotional beings. We get an emotion, and then we justify everything after the fact with like logic. We like almost curve fit the logic to fit the emotion. And that's why customer experience is so important, because if you can make people love you, if you can make them love your product, and they trust you, and they, stand by you, then they will constantly do business with you. And where you can point to the dollars and cents on that is lifetime value. It means every time you win a customer, instead of getting maybe the average, repeat orders 3 times, you can get to 6 repeat orders on average. Or, they'll subscribe for 5 years, not 2 years. And when you start doing the math on what the net present value is of customers who are worth 2 or 3 times as much as what you have now, customer experience easily pays for itself. And that's what really can bring that magic to a business. So, I love that.
What can businesses do better in serving customers? So for our listeners now who are running their own business, or they're part of a business where they have relatively senior position and they can influence how customers are treated, what would be your advice?
So I'm a big believer in start, stop, continue. It's a nice tool. So I'll give everybody one thing to start doing, one thing to stop doing, and one thing to continue doing. So I would say start doing primary interviews yourself, no matter what level of company. We've all heard about these great companies where CEOs of airlines, like, they'll work a flight, be a flight attendant, or they'll answer phones at, Zappos, or they'll do something like that. Everybody can talk to customers. There's nobody who should have a monopoly on that. And that should not always just be delegated to a market research firm. So start talking to customers, no matter if you're the senior executive, a mid-tier executive, or you're just an ambitious junior executive. Talk to them. The lingo and the insights will be there. And eventually you will find a pattern. Not everything has to be statistically significant, and you'll learn a lot. So that's the start. The stop is stop thinking that a pep talk is going to fix your problems. You can't pep talk to the customer service team or the sales team and get anything other than something that lasts to the end of the day. Because does anybody remember the pep talk they got last week? Can you remember a pep talk you got last week? I'm sure we all got one, but I don't remember it. And so stop doing that. Instead, focus on disciplined systems and processes that you can scale, that will give people latitude. I'm not saying that the process has to be super rigid so that people don't have choices. I'm saying quite the opposite. I'm saying make a process and be deliberate about what choices you're going to push all the way to the people who are closest to customers, but give them latitude that you can control. And then when they have choice, you're going to find that pep talk was totally unnecessary, because when they can make choices about what they're doing with the customers, they're going to be in more control. They'll be more assertive, more confident, and it'll come through in your customer experience. In terms of continue, though, I would say that there's not a firm out there who says, you know what I'm going to do? Today I'm going to wake up and I'm going to screw my customers. Nobody says that, we all do it on accident all the time, right? Because of a mistake that was made or something else. But I really believe there's nobody who does it. So keep that intent in mind and recognize that your intention to do good by your customers is not the same thing as the impact of doing good by your customers. Those are two different things, but continue to have that in your heart and continue to want that, and you'll figure the rest of it out.
Over the last few years, can you recall some aha moments, realizations, maybe 2, 3 you could share that really changed the way you look at life or the way you look at business?
Well, I think we've gone through a couple, but let me think about some aha moments. I think that in the last year, one of the ahas that I had came from a mentor of mine, and she is a lawyer. And she said, the person with the piece of paper wins. And I thought it was kind of a funny little mantra, but the more I've been thinking about it, the more I realized that it's true of so many things in life. For example, we all probably have some kind of knowledge wiki for our company, but very few of us have turned it into this gold mine that's just amazing. And I heard what she said, and then I looked at our internal wiki and our knowledge management tools, and I realized, you know what, this needs an upgrade. This is static, and the material in here is not that helpful. It was great 3 years ago, but the world's moved on, and we don't have systems to make sure that that material stays current. So, going back, the person with the piece of paper wins. Our piece of paper is our processes that are written in there, and we just needed to massively upgrade that. So, free plug-in for something that I don't get any commission for, but Notion was the tool that just made our team super excited to document and refresh and continue to document content. And I have to say, it seemed at first when I looked at it that it was exactly the same as our old antiquated system, which I will not name, but it just wasn't. And I realized, wait a minute, I should be eating my own dog food. Look at what they've done. Notion has made people love to enter their knowledge management materials, and they do it now. And the old system had the same buttons, it had the same functions, you could do the same things, but it didn't feel the same. And that user experience is all the difference that you need. And so, it's a testament to user experience and really the fact that they've nailed it. And that made the piece of paper that wins. I think that's it. So that's kind of been a big one that I've seen lately. The other one that I feel like that I've had a big aha on is the importance of training. And, we've all had learning management systems, but how many of us have just wanted to hit the easy button on learning management systems and say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy this learning management system. It comes with library of content, and I'm just going to import that content, throw my logo on it, send it out to my employees and call it done. And aren't I smart for putting an LMS out there that's good? And the answer is nope. That's a total fail, because now everybody is, turning on the LMS because they know they're being monitored, and then they go get coffee or make a sandwich or whatever it is they do, and then come back and go to the next lesson because they're so dry and so non-relevant that the learning management system is just trash, right? And so, and then of course the questions are all nitpicky little questions that sound like you're at the DMV. That's a fail too. So I especially at Motiv, where we have to have fantastic training, I just realized that's not something I can delegate. When I look at the things that are going to be high impact, I've got to do some of this myself, and I've got to make sure that the material is the most current, the most useful, the most relevant for the team based on all of the different years of experience that we have from our people. But then it's got to be packaged and delivered in a way that makes people want to stay there. It's got to be entertaining. It's got to be short. It's got to be brief. And if we can do that, then we can have LMS materials that will last for, hopefully they have a 36-month or a 48-month shelf life before we have to update them and re-record them, but they'll actually have a difference in the business. And so that's been a big aha. So I think that's two, Chris. That's all I've got for you right now.
Thank you. That is great. That is very helpful. I also wanted to ask you about time management. So you have a lot on your plate, and you managed to still do meditation and work out and other things. Just before we started recording, we were talking about an event you attended. So you have time for important things in your life. What advice would you give to someone who haven't yet found a good system to use?
Well, I think that thank you for the compliment, but let me just say, I think I struggle with that like everyone else. And let me tell you what my latest thought is on that. So I recently finished being a volunteer president of the Entrepreneurs Organization. I was doing that for a year. It's a full commitment. It's at least 10 hours a week, oftentimes 20, and I still had to run my company. So getting into that year, what I did was I met with my executive team, talked to them about why I wanted to do this. It was very important to me to both give back, but also I was excited for all the learning and opportunity that came with it. And so I really got the help from my team in that first year to do both of those things. But I will say that I don't think my time management was an A+ that year. I think I struggled with it. And then when that year ended, I wanted to start a second company. And so now we have a new company called Content Lion, and it's very exciting, and it's complementary to Motiv, and it's very cool. But I realized, gosh, I'm going to be the CEO of two companies now. It's sort of been a CEO of two companies before. What can I do differently? And while I was kind of off on a vacation with my son, I sat down for a couple hours and got kind of my thoughts together. And I realized that the key to the whole problem is the schedule and communication of the schedule. So really now what I do is I get up at 5:30 every morning, but only because I forced myself to go to bed at 9:00 the night before. So head on the pillow at 9, up at 5:30, and I give myself the first 30 minutes of the day to do whatever I want. Because for some reason, if I have to get up and go for a run or do something that just fills me with like, I'm going to bed, I'm hitting the snooze button. So if I can get up and just do whatever I want for 30 minutes, then I just pop out of bed. And so I get up at 5:30, great. 6:00, that's when I buckle down and do a workout. And I work out from 6 to 7. 7:00, I've got an hour to eat, to think, to meditate, to stretch, to write. And then at 8:00, the day begins, and it's 4 hours with one of my companies, followed by 1 hour of catch-up time to eat and relax, and then 4 hours with the other company. And I've just had to communicate to both of my teams, like, these are the 4 hours when I'm available for each of these things. And so by 5:00, the both of those commitments are done. And now I've got more freedom in my schedule between 5 and 9 to, be a family man, to catch up on something if I need to do whatever is there. And so that, by engineering the schedule that way, I'm able to keep a steady pace. I'm able to be more consistent. And I found that's been the key. So that's really what's allowed me to do that, is I've just defined it. I think that'll last for a while, and probably, in another 3 to 6 months, I'll reevaluate that and decide what I need to change and how I need to optimize it. But it seems like if I don't make any sudden moves, then everybody knows when they can count on me.
David, and what do you do on the weekends? Do you give yourself a break, or do you also work?
I don't work on the same things, because I do believe that leads to burnout. I spend a lot of time with my daughter. I have 2 kids. One is already in college, and boy, was that a wake up call. I mean, we had a great time. I didn't lose that time with him, but in fact, I was his robotics coach for years, which was another job. But when he left, boy, did that make me have a big hole in my life and in my heart, and just realize that an era was over. And there are these really depressing statistics. Like, when your kid leaves for college, that's 80% of the life time that you're going to have with them. And, and I was like, holy smokes. And so anyway, I figured out some plans to make sure that doesn't happen, but I still have a daughter at home, and I have her at home for, 27 more months. And, boy, I am not going to let any of that time pass. And so it's really important to me to just squeeze every moment that I can and savor it without making her crazy. 'Cause she's also 15, and I get it. The old man's not the coolest guy in the world, but if I can just make sure that I'm doing things that she's interested in and that we're connecting together, then I'm a really happy guy. And so that's my number one weekend priority.
I think you are quite cool.
Thanks, Chris. You're all right yourself.
Anything you wanted me to ask and I didn't? Anything else you wanted to share?
I just came from this 2-day conference, so I'm all pepped up on all these different ideas and things. And so there's just a couple of things in there that I thought were really great. So the conference, by the way, the Entrepreneurs Organization, to me, is the secret superpower behind everything, because everyone who runs a business has 3 things that they're always going to be struggling with, right? They're going to be struggling with the business itself. That's number one. So, the making sure that all that stuff goes correctly, but that's only 1/3 of the problems, right? The second third is how you balance the crazy stress of running that business with being a spouse or a parent, and not letting your kids and your spouse suffer. And so there's a whole second category of problems about how to make that work. And funny enough, there was the CEO of Bell Helicopter was at this event, and she said that there's no such thing as work-life balance. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, you can't keep them in balance. They're always going to be out of balance. But what you can have is work-life integration, which is, you can work one day and, it's a crisis day or a deadline day, and you're going to just tell your family, today is not the day for me to be here. Like, I will not show up today because I have to just crush something at work. But as long as you can be fully present at work, do the thing, then when it's time to go be fully present with the family and say, now it's family time, I'm drawing the boundary around this, then you can do that too. And so work-life integration was her point. I thought it was an excellent point. But getting back to Entrepreneurs Organization, there's the three things. So you got the family. And then the third thing is you got all sorts of problems in your own head. And funny enough, as an entrepreneur, with all the anxieties and stresses and sometimes the inability to talk to people about your problems, most entrepreneurs get in their own way more than any other problem they have. And an Entrepreneurs Organization has cracked the code on how to help you deal with all three problems and to build your toolkit for all of those. So anyways, EO had their big, conference where they brought in all these great speakers and that was just a wonderful 2-day event. So I think that, if someone is out there and they're working on a business and they feel like they can't talk to their best friend anymore about the high highs and the low lows, they can't talk to their spouse because it's going to freak that spouse out. They can't, obviously, they just are running out of people to talk to about their problems. Entrepreneurs Organization is for you, my friend. It is the place to go to try and make that happen. And I think that's been the secret superpower of my life. And it's definitely helped me change and adapt and grow through all the crazy times.
David, thank you so much for your honesty, for how generous you are with your advice, for the work you're doing in the world, for how much you care about people. I really appreciate you, and I really enjoyed our conversation.
Well, thanks, Chris. It's been a pleasure to be on your show.
Our guest today again has been David G. Ewing, and our podcast sponsor today is strategytraining.com. If you want to strengthen your strategy skills, you can get the overall approach used in well-managed strategy studies. It's a free download, and you can get it at firmsconsulting.com/overall approach. And you can also get McKinsey and BCG winning resume, which is a resume that got offers from both of those firms. And you can get it at firmsconsulting.com/resume PDF. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and I look forward to connect with you all next time.